Hello everyone, I'm George from Ireland. So this is a brief video about Tucker Carlson because somebody requested this a short time ago. So who is Tucker Carlson? Well, he's one of America's best known shock jocks. He's a staple on Fox News. He is about a half century in age, and he's even talked about as a presidential prospect for the Republican Party in 2024. But the pundit consensus is that he doesn't have a serious chance. Having said that, 10 years ago, who on earth would have ever imagined that Donald Trump would not only get the Republican nomination, but would actually win the election? So Tucker Carlson comes from a wealthy family. I believe he inherited millions of dollars, but he's made many more. He's got a distant Swiss ancestry. His ancestors immigrated to the United States in the 19th century, and he's known as America's most notorious anti-immigrant demagogue. So now one could argue for limited immigration or sensible immigration policy, but he seems to be against immigration, full stop, if I got that right, and also against immigrants. You could think that immigration might be a bad thing, but not that the immigrants are evil, but he appears to think that they're very wicked. And it's just so harmful and so on. So this has been a trope in American politics almost since the foundation of the United States. I mean, you find it in most countries. Xenophobia, obviously, this is fair game for debate. What's good about immigration? What's bad? What level should there be? What should the selection criteria be, and so forth? But you can be relatively circumspect about immigration without being racist. But he certainly goes well over the line into racialism. So he speaks with self-assurance and poise. I haven't noticed any disfluencies from him, but he is perpetually outraged. He is always affronted. He's always wearing this expression of perplexity and horror, so as in he just can't get it. He's shocked and stunned that people have human rights and things like that. So he is permanently offended, and obviously yet he's always denouncing the liberal left for being snowflakes. In fairness, a lot of left-wingers and liberals are snowflakes and have a cancel culture, but there's a right-wing edition of that as well. So he's been a race baiter and an Islamophobe. Now, there are obviously reasoned criticisms one can make of Islam as a whole, of particular Muslim individuals and organizations, and all that's fine, and I welcome people robustly scrutinizing and castigating all faiths, including Islam. However, Islamophobia is different as to suggest that all Muslims are bad. So there are well over 1 billion Muslims in the world. They're certainly not all bad. It's ludicrous. That would be as ridiculous to say that all Buddhists are good or all atheists are evil or something like that. Going on saying that Iraqis were monkeys is a couple of years ago a audio clip came to light that something he'd said way back in about 2003. He's gone on air on Fox News saying that immigrants are dirty, they're making America dirtier, that immigrants ruin an area, that no one would want a lot of immigration, particularly Hispanic immigration. So as flagrantly racialist as can be. And he's proved his bottomless ignorance by saying he wants my tacos and don't try and say they're a Mexican thing. So he's a xenophobe. Obviously doesn't recognise the United States. It's a melting pot, as people have long said. It's a cultural mishmash. I mean, no culture is hermetically sealed. We all receive memes and transmit memes, and there's no cordon sanitaire between one culture and the next, or between one ethnicity and the next. So we all blend into each other. I mean, some people are more blended than others. Some countries are more of a cultural and ethnic mélange than others, and the United States is one of the most mixed of all. And it's okay that non-Hispanic whites are something like 60% of the population, but those non-Hispanic whites originated in just about every country in Europe. Some came via Canada and so on. So he purports to believe that diversity is terrible, is lamentable, and deeply regrettable. So did the Native Americans want diversity? I mean, the whites who arrived there from 1607 onwards, they never sought permission. They simply landed. And now it's true later on some whites purchased land and signed treaties, but there are plenty of occasions when Britons or Frenchmen or Spaniards or whoever simply invaded, subjugated the autochthonous people, drove them out in many cases. But was it wrong of European immigrants to bring European languages with them? Should they have integrated into Native American life and learnt the indigenous tongue? precious few of them did so. So he's always an alarmist. He's the sort of on-air version of the yellow press, a sensationalist, creating a sense of panic, making people believe that they're in dire jeopardy. So there's this existential threat to the United States. There's always got to be immigrants, particularly Mexicans, Muslims, whoever it is, the enemy within the gates, and radiating odium at these outgroups. Why? Does he believe it to some extent? I mean, I suspect he does. There's another thing, is obviously it's a diversion so that working class Americans, particularly white Christians, won't see that they're being ripped off too. That yeah, they would be better off with affordable healthcare, publicly funded healthcare. That, I mean, climate change is real, and that's a major threat to us. Not ISIS or Al Qaeda. When's the last time ISIS killed a single person in the United States? Was it 5 years ago? Was it 10 years ago? Or the gun crime, which kills tens of thousands of Americans every single year. That absolutely nothing should be done to limit access to these deadly weapons. That would be depriving people of their liberty, despite him advocating for really depriving people of their liberty, as in sending them to prison without any release date, without trial or charge, and so on. He's advocated for torture and things like that, for full spectrum surveillance without warrants. So it's setting up as many bogeymen as he wants. Now these aren't entirely chimerical. I'm not saying that ISIS and Al Qaeda don't exist and so forth. So to set different sections of the working class in deadly hate the one against the other, on a racial basis, or on the ground of who is a born citizen, who's an immigrant citizen, and who's simply a resident of the United States but not a citizen, who's an illegal immigrant, scapegoating them, that all America's economic woes are due to them. So this is in consonance with his Fortress America worldview. So he tends to lash out. He ventriloquizes white anxiety, and some people feel that, particularly the proletariat, who had this wage compression for 4 decades. He's come out with all sorts of ludicrous statements, such as following medical advice is homosexual. I mean, incidentally, it being implicit there that he considered that to be reprehensible. Although he doesn't mainly bang on homophobic themes. He claims that global warming is a fallacy, he's anti-scientific, he's an irrationalist, and of course he finds some very willing auditors amongst religious fundamentalists. Obviously he's got more in common with Islamic extremists than he would care to acknowledge there. He has also disseminated completely bogus claims. He's always spreading disinformation. So he's often uttered the outright lie that Donald Trump won the 2020 election, that millions of votes were stolen from him, things like that. So, I mean, I wish the law of defamation was strong in the United States, because he should actually be taken to the cleaners. And these are consequential lies. These have repercussions. It undermines the presidency. It erodes faith in democracy. It's obviously playing into the hands of tyrants and enemies of America abroad, people like Putin or Kim Jong-un or President Xi Jinping. So he will utter flagrant falsehoods unblushingly. The man is utterly shameless. So he's always making Americans think that the US is in peril. There's been the red peril, the yellow peril. Now it's the liberal left and so on. It's endangering America with drugs and so on. But not the things that really kill lots of Americans, like firearms owned by other Americans. You can see my other videos about firearms. I don't propose banning all firearms in private hands, no. Now, obviously, there's a grain of truth in some of the things he says, especially when he eviscerates the far left, or the campaign to remove statues. I mean, I'm broadly on board with BLM, but the more radical end of BLM I don't agree with. There are things he denounces, such as deplatforming, third wave feminism, and I'm with him on some of this. The Me Too movement, I mean, he recognises that there's inanity there, that goes too far, that's liberticidal. But the right has its sacred cows too, such as flag desecration, or their outrage of people take a knee. I mean, I think people shouldn't kneel down during national anthems. I'm not really a fetish patriot, not that I'm American or anything. So that's a little bit about Tucker Carlson, who notably was the most admired right-wing advocate by Christopher Hitchens. So why is he popular? Well, he's got this sort of high-octane delivery. He's got a sort of settled worldview. He tends to confirm people's prejudices. It's quite emotive. He's always got an angle on something. He's fairly fast-moving without being difficult to follow. Yeah, so he tends to confirm people's prejudices. He's consistent. He's energetic. I suppose he's quite well presented. He doesn't go off script. He never tells his hearers anything they would dislike. Um, so he's constantly reinforcing their preconceived nostra. Well, that's just a little bit about Tucker Carlson, and I suspect he's probably has a long career at Fox News ahead of him. Nothing he said, however despicable, seems to have dented his popularity. Well, that's enough from me, so please subscribe and book online lessons with me. So what else? Oh yes, I always need donations on PayPal. You can find me there by georgecallahan79 at gmail.com. Okay, thank you. Goodbye.